Welcome to the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses all the things that schools may have missed, with your hosts AJ Kuti and Jason Gordon. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. We are the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses the things that schools may not have prepared for. As always, I'm AJ. Jason, sitting across from me, how you doing today?
Doing great, AJ. It's been a wonderful morning.
Oh, it's been a morning. That is for sure. My campaign for another degree is hitting an intersection right now that is throwing me for a loop.
It's thumping you, huh?
Oh my goodness. I have learned more about what I'm not good at. And then I'm not proud to say that list is very long.
Well, it's just market research for this podcast, right? You got to go through the academic experience while you're giving people advice about it.
Good grief, man. Writing papers is not my forte. You give me a math problem, I will sit there, I will love it. But this whole writing thing is, woof, buddy.
It's getting to you, huh?
It is. Well, in today's topic, and this actually is really interesting because this is something that I am doing a lot of, obviously, right now in my program. But today's episode, we're going to be talking about learning with and from others. So your classmates, other people around you. So that sound good to you?
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of that. But before we do, let me remind everybody, follow us on the social media profiles. Remember, we're Reschool'd. That's with a D, not an ED. Check us out on your favorite podcasting apps as well. We need those stars, right? Like us. Let us know what you think. Shoot us a message directly. Visit our website, right? You can access our old episodes, things like that, and communicate with us. Tell us what you want to hear about. But,
yeah, and I think for Apple, I'm not sure what it is on Spotify and podcast. I do know for Apple, we're not supposed to say subscribe because subscribe implies the money. There's a plus sign. Just hit the plus button. Plus us.
Just download us.
That works. If you hit plus, you'll get notifications that when we have new episodes out. So, all right. Yeah. So with this topic, our quick question of the day, and I think it's pretty broad. How did you learn best during your academic career?
Well, I guess it always depended on the class. There's recent research out there that says everybody learns best in the same ways. I know that sounds crazy, but that's the way the research is pointing now, that everybody does recall and things do get ingrained deeper by hands-on experiential learning. We know that, right? People can learn by reading, right? People can learn by just listening to somebody explain it. And a lot of people say, I'm an audio learner. I'd rather somebody explain it to me than read it. I learn better that way. No, you don't. You may hate reading, but if you read something, because there's some level of transmittal there that gets recorded in your mind, you will remember it better if you read it than, so that being said, so I'm like everybody else, but how did I prefer? How did I attack it? I read like crazy. I read everything in college, and that was what I depended on. Later on, graduate school, the same way. Law school, it was mostly reading. But during my MBA program, that's when kind of our topic today, I learned so much from the people around me, right? The people that had like similar interests and things like that. So I've kind of been through phases where each of them, based upon the type of education I was receiving, became more important. I don't know. How about you?
So I fell into that basket of, I felt like I had a preferred method, which is the audio side. I've, for learning disabilities and such, reading has not been my strongest suit. Now, I will say I have forced myself to read a lot more in the program than I am right now, as just a way to, my grades weren't the best back then, so I wanted to try something different to see if it's working. But I'm reading a whole lot more now, and I can feel like I'm learning a lot more. I will say it is reemphasized when I do hear it. So through videos that the professors are posting or whatever. So that does help. And then actually going through it. So it's not really one method. It's all the methods, it's the doing, the hearing, the reading, all those kind of things. Interestingly enough, I had to do a presentation last weekend on the different types of learning, but these were all more or less self-diagnosed methods. But one of the things that and maybe this is why this topic is so near and dear to me, is one of the things that I really rely on is the other classmates. And it's for us, the cohort members.
Mm-hmm.
Like the closeness of the cohort, the support that we get from the members, and the help that we get, and just the different perspective. Like that was one of the things that I learned, especially in math. And I think this is kind of for most people, especially those who struggle with math, is that you get taught more or less one way to do something, or one way to interpret something, or one way to perceive something. But there's other ways that you can kind of rationale to make sense of what you have to do. And sometimes it takes somebody else's rationale to really make it click for you. Or maybe it's a different example, or maybe it's something. So having multiple perspectives really helped me understand and kind of formulate my own story, or formulate my own understanding of whatever the problem's in front of me. So that's why I rely on others a lot.
And, luckily schools, educational institutions have kind of embraced that, right?
Yeah.
They try to layer things now.
Yeah.
Right? They make group projects part of your
Ooh, you said the
learning
group word. Ooh.
I know the group word. Everybody hates that, but there's something there that helps, move it further or ingrain it in your brain a little bit better than just doing it by yourself. But it's the combination, right? If you just did it as a group, you might not learn it to the extent you would have to individually. And if you didn't try to practice it like in a case study, or you didn't, all of these methods that get layered on top, right? We know the more angles you come at it, right? In a perfect world, you could have 5 professors teaching you something the same way. Yeah. But you got the next best thing, right? You've got other people. You don't necessarily have to depend on the professor alone as the means or manner for learning new material. Okay, I mean,
well, it's interesting you say that, and I think well, let's get into the first question, and then I'll explain what you just said, what kind of hit me or struck me, because it makes complete sense, and this is completely how I feel. So our first question on the main topics is. Do you need other people to learn? And for me, as you were saying this, it kind of went to, can you do college alone? You can. Mm-hmm. But does it make things easier when you have other people, or make things better when you have other people around you? And so then I kind of got going into, okay, why? Why does it make things better around you, or easier for you to understand, or whatnot? And it was kind of going back to what I was saying. You get different perspectives, you get things, but also too, and I'm a firm believer in this, and I do this in my classes that I teach as well as the classes that I'm in, is I think you learn a whole lot more when you're having fun. Mm-hmm. And having people around you help you have fun. Yeah. If you can find most of the time, like-minded people that like to relax and just have fun, you're going to put more focus and energy into it, and you're actually going to get something better out of it, versus if you look at it going to school, and I'm only going to go to school, I'm not going to talk to anybody, I'm just going to go to school for the purpose of school and then leave. Mm-hmm. You're just doing it more as a job than you are actually having fun, and that having fun aspect is what gets you a lot of learning. You learn a lot from that.
That's something I've heard students complain about in the past, that, they really didn't understand the value of the community and everything like that early enough. They wish they had gotten more involved earlier on. Type scenario. I think at some perhaps bigger schools that have a ton of on-campus life and things like that, some students go the opposite direction and do too much fun, and don't dedicate themselves to the learning aspect of it as much. But back to your question, can you do college by yourself? Well, of course, to a certain extent. So there's always going to be the professor, right? I mean, or there's always going to be the book or the assignments and things like that. So there's going to be the idea that the college kind of, lays out a schedule that you follow. They shepherd you through the process. So there's that aspect of it. But when we go back to that definition of learning versus training, right? And the idea of you can learn how to do things. You can be taught to do this procedure, versus higher level learning, which is understanding the thought behind it. Usually that portion of it requires you to, it requires what we call mindfulness, right? Thinking outside of yourself, trying to understand how other people see it. Because like you said, if things are explained in different ways, there's so many different ways of looking at things. You have a way of looking at something, and you may not be fully aware of other people's way of looking at things. And that may come as a shock to you, right? I was watching a series on, I think it's on Netflix. It might be on HBO. I've got both of them. I can't remember, but it's creating Anna Delvey. I don't know if you've heard about
Oh
that.
yeah. So I know
It's
what you're talking about.
right. It's super interesting. But towards the end, you see the perspective of the people who are close to her, right?
Mhm.
And I had a completely different perspective. And I'm watching these actors, make this emotional play towards, something. I'm not going to give anything away because, I don't know who's
Spoiler alert, we don't want that.
yeah, no, I don't want to spoil it. But at the end, I'm completely different than the driving force there at the end of everybody around her. I'm like, yeah, I can see where you're coming from here, but that is, type scenario. So it just exposes you beyond your level of thought. And that's the true essence of learning. And, that's why when we did that episode on the difference between, in-person and online classes and things like that, there's a difference there, right? College is different if you do it in those different formats. It's not the same thing because you are missing one fundamental element if you do it all by yourself versus with others. And, that's why we're talking about this now, right? That's why we really have to get to the heart of, right, what do other students mean in college? What do other people in the college administration that you interact with, what do they mean to your education, to your learning, that type of thing?
So to the point where we both said this, where it's good to have other people because you learn different perspectives. You can see different perspectives. You hear different perspectives, different ways to conceptualize the information. The teacher tends to obviously present the information, teach the information in a certain way. Are you somebody that when you teach your class, you teach it how was most effective for you to be taught?
Well, I'll say this, no, because the most effective way for me was to read it and then try it, right?
Sure.
If it was stuff I had to memorize, read it and then rewrite it as notes. That was my primary study method. Read it, and if I could memorize it long enough to handwrite it, not type it, because things can just flow through and you don't record anything. But if you handwrite it, you have to temporarily memorize it to write it down. I don't make my students do that. That's a very, very time-consuming way of stuff. And a lot of the things I teach, you don't have to memorize the facts that closely. So I pursue a different method. I basically try to put it out there as the information is out there in the world. You can always get it. You can find it anywhere, that type of thing. So you need to be familiar with how to get the information, and you need to be exposed to it to be able to work through the thought process that we'll go through in class. So I do a ton of videos. That was the whole genesis of my website, thebusinessprofessor.com. Right, I do explanatory videos, written articles that explain topics and things like that. But it's nothing you can't find anywhere else. I just bring it all together, right? I teach it in my way in one place, but you can find that same information all across the internet, all across videos, all across YouTube, that type of thing, if you want to find it. But, that allows me to take the time to, in class, try to just chit chat about it a little bit more, right? Just try to give you an example of how this came up in the real world type scenario. Some of my classes I'm able to do the project stuff, the case study stuff, every class, which is awesome, right? Because students are way more engaged by just doing and practicing. But that means I have to assign videos and I have to assign readings and do quizzes on them beforehand to make sure there's, they've had that exposure so that they can actually benefit from the practical portion.
Yeah, see, when I teach, I'm on the other side. Well, somewhat, but for me, when I was a student, I learned more from the examples. And when I say examples, I'm talking about like almost the outlandish examples, the ones that kind of make you smirk a little bit because you're like, okay, this is just funny. It's just you pick something out of it and it's funny, or you do some kind of stupid skit that they're going to remember. Like I do this thing. I do the 3 examples of revenues. What is revenue? And if this happens, then this, then is it a revenue and this and this? And they kind of enjoy it. And I usually bring props to just kind of embellish a little bit more because that's kind of how it made me make sense of it. I like the examples and putting them into terms. I love putting things into layman's terms because obviously accounting is very technical when you use the terminologies that they're trying to use. I try to put them in ways that are just very layman's terms, especially for an intro class. They're is a revenue more detailed, more complex than the way I explain it at the first couple days of class? Oh yeah, absolutely. And I let them know that. I said, look, this is just the foundation side. Once you get into higher level accounting, you're going to have more things where you say, well, what if this happens? Well, that happens, and you got to figure out how to record it. So I really try to just build that foundation, keep it interesting, and keep it somewhat foundational, so that they can grow later on. But yeah, I'm somebody that tends to teach the way that made sense to me.
And both of us, we have both taken a lot of classes in college, right? And we've seen a lot of different types of professors in different subject matters, right? Because everybody goes through a general education curriculum. So we've seen the social sciences, we've seen the histories, we've seen the hard sciences, we've seen the maths, that type of thing. And you're going to find different formats. And, that's why the collective experience of college, taking classes on different subject matters, what you learn, the factual knowledge, the majority of it's going to dissipate. You're going to lose it. Probably 80 to 90% of it will go. There'll be some core foundational stuff that stays. But in my mind, the stuff that stays is really the stuff that was cemented in the right way. And once again, that's that combination, the stuff that's layered, the stuff that's revisited over and over, the stuff that made some kind of impact. So your brain, as they say, wrinkled, right, the right way so it doesn't unfold and you forget it, right?
True.
So,
well, what are some strategies that people can use to learn from other people, like students use to learn from other people?
Well, to start with, you have to get to know the other people, right?
That's a big one, yeah.
That's number one. You can't just show up and listen to the professor and don't take advantage of the other resources that are there. So, and who are the other people?
That was a question I was going to ask, is maybe we should define other people, because other people, obviously, I think the most obvious one is the other classmates. Mm-hmm. But you also have the teacher. You also have other resources on campus.
Yeah. I mean, think about all the, everything from career services. I mean, that teaches you a lot about life, to learn how to interview, to learn how to network, to learn how to present yourself professionally. Think about the centers.
I was about to say the Academic Enhancement Center, usually like where the tutors are. That's a big one.
Yeah, that's going to be huge. Sometimes it's professional tutors. Sometimes it's student tutors, right, that have already taken the class, or upperclassmen type thing. You're going to also have different, I would say, affinity groups on campus type thing, your marketing clubs, your accounting clubs, and things like that. They do presentations. They have guest speakers come in, right? That's organized as, part of the academic experience. That is other people influencing you in a way. So everything from the clubs to the academic centers, whether you got an entrepreneurship center, whether you got an international center, that type of stuff. All of these people are going to have an impact on you. Oh, I need to mention the administrative folks, right? The counselors. Yeah. The counselors offer a ton of value that oftentimes students don't take advantage of, okay? Because they've seen this stuff over and over. They've talked to 1 million students. They know the questions that are being asked, type things, because they've been asked them and had to find the answers. So anyway, that's, I think, what we mean by, use your other people. So my strategy number one is you have to orient yourself where you are going to make yourself aware of and make contact with these other people. Okay, that's the starting point.
One of my strategies is, you're looking, most of the time when you're trying to learn from other people, you're looking for help from other people. I think there is a lot of value in helping other people too. Mm-hmm. I think you gain a lot from helping people understand concepts. So, we have in our program, we have study sessions that we put together. And if somebody needs help outside of that study session, I've met with students a bunch of times to talk about stats, because stats is something that I'm more comfortable with. I'm more confident myself with, and I can help them based on what I know. Now, I'm not saying I know everything by any stretch of the imagination. It's just one of the areas that I'm more comfortable with, to get past, what the projects are and to kind of go through and interpret the results and stuff like that. And I love helping the students who need help with that. And, some of them may wonder, why am I doing this? But I told a couple of them, a couple weeks ago, is they have to understand, like, me helping them helps me just as much because they ask questions that I may not know, and it gives me the ability to go back and go, okay, I need to freshen up on that, or I need to look back at that, or it gives me a different way of looking at things. So as much as I'm maybe helping them, it's also helping me, and it's also just obviously reemphasizing what I've been doing. So I'm able to understand it a little bit better. I've always told my students the best way to study for the class, especially if it's like a quantitatively based class, is understand why we do it, not so much how we do it. 2 + 2 = 4. We know that, but why? And once you figure out the whys, it doesn't matter how the question is presented to you. It can be written so many different ways, but once you understand that why, you can answer that because you can go through and actually, using understanding and concept, figure out what the answer is.
Okay, I'm going to piggyback off of that a little bit, right? Every student is going to have some level of understanding that they soak up. So once you get to know the students, the other folks, the professor's going to explain it in a certain way. The book's going to explain it in a certain way. Talk to them and work together on a problem and have them explain it to you. And you explain it to them how you work through it. Okay? Comparing those two methods or ways, because obviously there's going to be some different view or some different perspective or some different approach. Maybe you are the one that knows a little bit more about it than the other one, and most of the teaching is flowing from you to them. But without question, there's going to be things that come back, right? So my second tip there is make certain that you're interacting with other students, you're interacting with other tutors, whoever you're using for the exchange or learning of information, and have them to explain it to you and you explain it to them backwards and back and forth, right? That is a very important learning method.
Yeah, I can say, like, when I started teaching, I mean, I would imagine if you talk to anybody, your first class was a train wreck if you look back. It was for me. And like, I look back, and when I started to have to teach the stuff, like I was fairly confident in myself that I understood it. But when I actually started to have to teach it, that's when I truly got a really good understanding, a deep understanding of the information. And I think when students, if you can do a study session together where you teach each other something, it's going to just reemphasize the topics that you're talking about because you're looking at them on a deeper level because you're having to teach it. Mm-hmm. That's a huge one. My last one would be, from a strategic standpoint, is strategically place yourself in good situations. Work with others. Put yourself in situations where it's going to lead to something else. Put yourself in situations where you're going to gain something from it, and you're also going to give something back too. So you talk about the different centers and the different administrators and the different tutoring services and all those kind of things. If you have the ability to take use of them, be open to the fact that I think the worst thing that, to me, I've seen in the past is people who say, I don't need anybody else. I can do this on my own. And I'm proud that I can do it on your own. And that's great. But being open to others' help isn't a sign of weakness. It's strength, and it is the understanding that there are deficiencies that you have. No matter how much you want to try, everybody has deficiencies. There are things that you excel at. There's things that you are deficient at. I could give you a whole list of the stuff that I'm deficient at, and I understand that. And I try to set myself up with that in mind, and keeping an open mind, and the 12-step plan. I accept the fact that I'm deficient in these areas. I set myself up with people who are better in those areas, so they can help me. I can feed off of their help, and then also help them where they're deficient at. So, let's go on to the next question. How do colleges give you the opportunity to learn from other people? Like, obviously you have to make your own, but colleges also just present you with the opportunity sometimes too. You just got to take it.
Absolutely. I mean, now, and I try to integrate some of the things I saw in the past at different times and at different levels. You had group work. Everybody knows that one, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody, most people dread it to start with because it is challenging. It is a different way of working on things when you have to meld all those points of view into one output or one final product for a project or assignment. So, college allows you to do that. Not just here is what you need to learn, but here's how you need to learn this together with others type scenario. So that's, that alone is one. What's one from you?
I would say, the best opportunity is the fact that you're in class. So you gain the friendships with the classmates. You have those relationships, or at least they present you with the opportunities to have those relationships. Take advantage of those. You have your friends on campus. They know certain things that you don't. You know certain things that they don't. So you're kind of working back and forth and helping. So I think just the fact that, especially, obviously I'm talking about an on-campus type college, not a fully online, but an on-campus, it just naturally presents you with the opportunity to get close to other people. So that would be my first one.
Next, I'll jump to some of these, co-curricular things that the college offers. Like I'm a co-director of an entrepreneurship center, right? And when students are working on their own venture, on their own project, and they come to us for help, and we help guide them. We help coach them through the process. Sometimes it's procedural. Sometimes it's bigger picture. Sometimes it's what's the next step, or where's the resources? Where can I get or access the resources that I need to achieve this objective type scenario? But that is learning. I mean, that stuff stays with them forever. Okay. It just gets ingrained. And it's not always a professor that serves in that role. Sometimes it's administrative or folks or staff at the school that serve in that function. So that's another way that academic institution sets you up for success, by learning from others in that way.
That was mine too. That was my last one as well. Last question, and this one actually is the one I've been waiting for, because everything that we've talked about really up to this point is learning from others from an academic standpoint. Outside of academics, what are other areas that you could learn from others about?
In my mind, that is probably the single most important aspect of higher level education.
Sure.
Just diversity of opinion, diversity of thought, diversity of background. People come to a single spot with different cultures, with different understandings, with different perceptions. They can be of different socioeconomic class. They can be culturally diverse. They can be ethnically diverse. And there's just so many ways that you can be exposed to points of view, right? Or things that you're not used to by coming together in the college environment.
One of the things that I did a lot, or I relied on others for, is their understanding of their experience with classes. And not when I say that, I'm not saying, hey, what's the Easy A class? I'm looking for more information about the professor. So like, what type of professor is this? Is this more of a lecture base, or is this more of, hands-on, or is this more? So I relied on my classmates a lot that have taken other professors, just to see if the professor that I'm thinking about taking kind of meshes with what my perceived style is, what I feel like works best for me, or what I enjoy the most. That was a big one for me. And again, that has a lot to do with understanding kind of what you're looking for. And again, I'm not saying Easy A. Now, there were classes that I did look for that. I think everybody looked for that at some of them, but especially in your core, I mean, not your core, your major classes, that's the ones that you don't want the Easy A, because that's your major. You want to learn. Mm-hmm. So I was really looking for who am I going to learn best under?
The next one I would say would be your social and interest groups, right? There is a lot to be learned by taking part in your clubs that may not be academically focused, right? It may be you're just interested in a sports team, right? It may be that you're interested in outdoors life or whatever. It may be some religious group or organization. It could be any of those things. But once again, you're bringing together people with diverse perspectives around the topic, that camaraderie, that exchange of ideas, that type of thing. Sometimes it reinforces some of the beliefs or interests you already had, but oftentimes it expands it, right? It makes you interested in other things that you never were before. And once again, that's a huge value, and it goes to that larger concept of education, right? Beyond just learning how to do things.
And my last one, and I wouldn't say this is a learn. It is just more of a benefit from the time that you spend with others, especially in college, because you're tasked with so many things that stress can get kind of overwhelming at times. But being around those people allows you to kind of maintain that fun factor where you're going to be less likely to burn out. And I think that's something that's really heavy right now on colleges across the campus or across the world, is that the burnout is a real thing. Mm-hmm. And if you try to go at it yourself, you have no release when it comes to all this stress. I mean, because you're trying to take it on by yourself. When you have others around you, at least they give you this outlet to where you can still have some kind of sanity, some kind of fun, and it's going to really decrease the likelihood of you having burnout. And the support, like that's when I get texts all the time that we people in our cohort that, they support us. They say, "Oh, you're doing fine. You're doing great. And here's some things that I feel like I can help." They send me to websites and stuff like that. And that's helped me immensely, because I'm by myself. I'm just sitting over here going, I have made a bad decision on having to do this. And to hear, one, that other people's going through the same thing and then we're going to get through it together is really helpful and humbling to know that other people are on my side.
Yeah, people need other people. Camaraderie, you're in the same spot, you're making it through together. And there is something about seeing other people suffering alongside you, but they're making it. It makes you stronger mentally. That says, they're doing it, I can do it, right?
Yeah,
type
exactly.
scenario. So that's very, very, good point. Are you experiencing any of that in your doctoral program now?
I was doing good up until this week. Like this week, man. So one of the things, and this kind of goes back to the fun factors for me, all of my classes, all of my academic career, I've always tried to find professors that I can relax with. Like I can just, outside of the academic setting, I can shoot the bull with, have fun with, because at least it gives me this sense of calmness. And my professor for the class that we're having to write this paper for, we've had this is the third week, but the first 2 weeks in my head was going through and making the presentation, because we had to present on it last week. And then this week is the first draft. And then the next week is when the final draft is due. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, 2 weeks is the presentation. I got 1 week to do the paper, which I understand that is not the right way to think of this. It's more of, I've had 3 weeks to write the paper and do the presentation. So my time management wasn't very strong there. But when I saw him, when we went up for residency, like I gave him a bunch of crap on only having 1 week to do this, and he gave it right back to me, and it was a lot of fun just being able to laugh, and that in and of itself just made the whole thing better. It made me relax a lot. And so I told him, I appreciate you doing this, because it's not being able to see you outside of this professional classroom kind of setting and just having fun. It makes the whole experience for me a lot more fun, and I get a lot more out of it. So yeah, it's tough, but it's like I said, it's the fun side of it. I don't feel burnt out yet. You asked me what's due in a couple of days, so ask me in a couple of days, because I'm probably going to be staying up for a while.
Lots of coffee.
Oh God, it's just the amount of. I'm not a reader, and the amount of reading you have to do is just ridiculous.
You don't see, guys. You don't often hear your professor say that, do you?
Oh my God, that's why
I'm not a reader.
No, I'm not, and that's why I don't assign reading in my classes, because I don't feel like I always felt like if I'm going to assign something, I should do it, and that is not one thing I want to do. And so, but I'm learning a lot. I'm learning to like it for what it is. But it's just it's a learning curve that I'm having to go through. So I understand it. I can empathize with everyone that's going through college right now, and their undergrads and grads and stuff like that. So, this has been a great show. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
This is a topic I was not expecting to be as fun. So, before we head out, you got any other parting words?
Just remind everybody, hit us up on the website, send us a message, check us out on the different social media and podcast platforms. We need it. Hopefully you'll get some value out of it. Win-win, right?
Absolutely. Well, until next time, we hope to see you there. Goodbye.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Reschool'd podcast. Be sure to head over to reschool'd.com for news and other information on things we're getting into.